Alright, today we're going to talk about bump mapping and normal mapping. So what bump maps or normal maps are is they're basically a way of adding a lot of detail and a lot of texture to your geometry. So for example, what I have right here is just 4 different planes. Nothing really changed on them. They're, I believe, 10 by 10. Let me just make sure. Yeah, they're 10 by 10 in geometry. Nothing exciting with them. Nothing's assigned to them currently. And what we're going to do is I'm going to assign 4 different textures to these objects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my hypershade. So I just got my hypershade here. I'm going to create 4 different Lamberts. So got 4 different Lamberts right here. And what I'm going to do is for each one, I'm going to assign a texture to it. So just to show it on one Lambert at a time, you just go to where your common material properties are. We're going to go to this little checker box right here. And I'm going to go to File. And that's going to add a file node to my texture. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image Name. And click on the folder right there. And I'm going to use this brick one for this one right here. So that's just going to add that brick texture. I'm going to do the exact same thing for all the other ones. The only reason I'm doing 4 right now is just because I have 4 textures prepped up. So I'm going to do another brick texture right there. Let's see. I'm going to do this mossy, that mossy rock texture for that one. And this last one I'm going to do, I believe, a low resolution, if I can find it, this one right here. So a low resolution like metal pattern. After that, I'm going to assign each one of these brick patterns, or each one of these textures altogether, to a different plane. So I'm just assigning them right now. I'm going to press 6 so they all show up. And that's all I'm going to do for right now. So if we look at these, they look really nice, but they're very flat. If I look at them from any other angle, it's just going to show us they're just flat images on these planes. And if we wanted to use them, sure, they look nice, but they're not going to really give that sense of realism. It's not going to really give you that those shadows, those lighting effects, anything like that. So what we do is we add bump maps or normal maps to these shaders in order to give them that extra little bit of depth. And to do it is pretty simple. So I already have all these made, but I'm going to show you how to make it with 2 of these for now. And it's a really easy job if you have the right tools. So there are programs online that will do this for you for free. You just upload the photo and it'll create a bump map or a normal map for you. But we're going to do it in Photoshop today. So I'm going to open up Photoshop right here. And I've got 2 images. I've got my low resolution metal piece and a much higher resolution brick piece. Whenever you're creating textures, you do want a higher resolution for things like this, just because you'll get a lot more detail. And you want to make sure these textures are pretty much tileable. And what I mean by that is, if I take the bottom right here and add it to the top right here, it will match up. That way we can have our whole texture kind of wrap around and not look choppy in certain parts. So let's start with this brick one. To turn this brick piece into a normal map, all you do is go to 3D, and then we're going to go to, actually, is it 3D? No, we're going to go to Filter, 3D, and then we could go into either Generate Bump Map or Generate Normal Map. I'd say go with the normal map for now because it's more widely used. So just go like that. Give our computer a few moments to process it. And now we have our bump map. Here we have a 3D object, and we kind of see what it looks like. And as of right now, it looks like it's not really taking the information correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Invert Height. And let's see, did that change anything? Not really. Let's see if we have to put it on a donut. That's looking a lot better. What we're essentially going for is we want to have a nice amount of detail. Let me put it on a cube so that we can kind of see. Let me have one that wraps around so you can actually see the continuation of it. There we go. That looks pretty good for now. You could change how you want the details to be, but in this case, that looks pretty good as it is. I'm going to hit OK. And now we have is a nice normal map. After that, all I'll do is I'm going to save this image as brick underscore normal. Hit save. Hit OK. And now that one's pretty much done. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. This is a much lower res texture, but it should still work. So I'm just going to go in, I'm going to create a new normal map. Let it think about it. Looks like the bumps are correct. Let me just make sure. Yeah, looks like it's correct. We're going to hit OK. Same process. I'm just going to save it as metal underscore normal and hit OK. After that, we don't really need Photoshop anymore. We can go back into Maya and we can start adding our textures. So I did these two textures right here. These I did already prior. And let's just start with this metal one. So I'm going to go back into my hypershade. I'm going to look for my metal texture. I'm going to graph it just so I can see this like that. And if we go back to our property editor, we'll see a spot that says bump/normal mapping. I'm just going to click on that little checker box right there. I'm going to go to File. And then for the bump value, I'm going to click on this icon right here, and then the folder for image name, and I'm going to go find my normal map. And then we just add it, and let's take a look at it now. So now we have a lot more depth in there. It might not make much sense just yet, but it does have a lot better resolution and better properties in that depth. So if I went to, let's just say, a renderer, let's just rendered software, you can see how it has a little bit more textures, not as flat looking as the other ones. If I added, let's just say, I'll put in a physical sky so I can render it in Arnold. And we try it again. You can see it show up even more. So that looks pretty good. What you could always do is if I go to my bump map and pretty much look through here, or if I go in to my bump file right here, you can change these values and we could increase the bump depth or decrease it based on how bumpy you want it to be. So if I go really far over to one side, you'll see it gets really weird looking, but you can change how high you want the depth to be. So there's that one done. I'm gonna just undo that so it's back to normal. And let's just do our other bump maps. So we've got this one right here. I'm gonna add my file for that. And for the bump map, I'm going to add my brick normal map. Just like that. And if we look at it, it definitely has a lot more depth with it now. I'm going to do my mossy one. So all I'm doing is pretty much, just setting it up to have its normal map added. And it's not too difficult. There we go. Add that normal map to it. But as we add it there, we can see the enhancements of the detail. So if I make this a little bit smaller so you can see this a bit better, I'll go in and we'll add our nice last bump map. So we're just going to go in, There it is. And then they are. So if we look at all these right now, they have a lot more detail added to them. So we can kind of zoom in really close. You can see all that little detail. If I went to, let's just say, my Arnold renderer and have it set to an IPR render, that you can see it looks a lot better than it would normally. It looks like it has a lot more geometry than we normally had originally. So let me just zoom in really close so you get a really good look at this detail. So as you can see, a lot more of the light is kind of coming through, a lot more of the details are coming through. So it's a great way of having everything come up nicely and really show a lot more geometry that actually isn't there. So one other thing that I will go over is, like I said before, you do want your shaders or your textures to be tileable. So if I went into this one right here, and let's just say I go back into my hypershade, I go graph this one, and let's say I go into my place 2D texture, you'll have a section that says repeat UV, and let's just say I change this to 10 by 10. What will happen is it will repeat that UV, and we look really close, you could see that it is a pretty seamless repeating of all around my texture. You don't really see any of those different details or any like sharp lines that say like, hey, this is exactly where it cuts off because it doesn't match up properly or anything like that. Same thing goes for this one. And while it's always good to create your own, there are tons of resources online that will show you how to essentially make your own bump maps and texture maps like this. So you do have to pay a little bit of close attention to it. Like in this case, you kind of see how it's repeating all these different designs. So that's where you want to be very careful with it. But as you can see, there isn't any like drastic lines where you see a change in color and it's very sharp. But it looks really good. And that's pretty much all there really is to creating bump maps or normal maps. If you wanted to create your own, we could always go in and we'll go create a new one. I'll just do like 11 by 11 square. And essentially all you would really need to do is create a bump map or normal map however you want, which they also take in black and white values. So for example, let me get a nice big brush. Let me get one that's a little blurrier than this. Oops, that went too harder actually. Let's lower that hardness. There we go. Let's increase the size. So let's just say I want something like this going around. I could save this image right here and it will be my bump map. So the black areas will be a value of 0, the white ones will be a value of 1. So if I hit save, and I'll just put that there. And what I'll do is I'm going to go back into Maya. I'm going to go into this steel one right here. I'm just going to change that bump map to the new file I made. So I'm just going to go in just so you can see the difference of it. So here's my test bump. I'm going to open that and add that there. So now you kind of see those details in there. So there's a lot of different things you could do with it that'll really make it your own. So along with that, if you feel free to kind of respond in the comments if you have any questions. I'll try to help out as best as I can. Thank you. Have a nice day.